In the small town of Hollow Creek, where the leaves painted the streets with hues of red and gold, a peculiar Thanksgiving tradition unfolded each year. The townsfolk gathered at the abandoned mansion on the outskirts, a place rumored to be haunted. This year, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to join in. As I approached the mansion, a chill ran down my spine, and the wind whispered eerie tales of the past. The door creaked open, as if welcoming me into its ominous embrace. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and the flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows on the dilapidated walls. The host, a mysterious figure clad in a tattered cloak, welcomed us with a hollow voice. "Tonight we give thanks to the spirits that reside here," he declared. The room fell silent, and the air grew heavier with each passing moment. The feast was served on a long, decrepit table, adorned with rotting pumpkins and wilted flowers. Unease settled in my stomach as I noticed the peculiar dishes, a ghastly stew and peculiar pies with crusts that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. I hesitated but succumbed to the pressure, taking a small serving. As the night progressed, the room echoed with ghostly whispers, and strange shadows seemed to move independently of their surroundings. The atmosphere became increasingly unsettling, and a sense of dread hung in the air like a thick fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. Midway through the feast, the candles flickered violently, and the temperature in the room dropped. The host stood up, his cloak billowing in an unseen breeze. "It's time for the offering," he intoned, his voice sending shivers down my spine. Suddenly, the guests began to vanish one by one, swallowed by the shadows that encroached upon the room. Panic set in as I realized I was surrounded by an ethereal presence, unable to discern friend from phantom. The once joyous occasion morphed into a nightmare, and I frantically searched for an escape. In the dim light, I stumbled upon a hidden passage, its entrance revealed only by the haunting glow of an ancient lantern. Desperation guided my steps as I descended into the depths of the mansion. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in, adorned with ghastly portraits that watched my every move. As I delved deeper, a haunting melody echoed through the corridors. A mournful tune played on a long-forgotten piano. The source of the music led me to a forgotten ballroom, where translucent figures swayed to the spectral symphony. Their hollow eyes locked onto mine, and a cold wind whispered the tales of their tragic demise. In the center of the ballroom, a figure dressed in a tattered wedding gown danced alone. Her face was obscured by shadows, but her presence exuded a profound sorrow. With each step, memories of her past echoed in the haunting melody. The room pulsed with energy as the spirits replayed their final moments. I was entranced by the ghostly performance, unable to tear myself away. The line between the living and the dead blurred, and time seemed to lose its meaning. The walls groaned, and the floor quivered beneath my feet as if the mansion itself mourned its forsaken inhabitants. In a sudden crescendo, the music reached a climax, and the ghostly figures vanished into the shadows. The room fell silent, and the air hung heavy with the weight of the past. I found myself alone, standing in the darkened ballroom, surrounded by the echoes of a tragedy that had unfolded centuries ago. As I stumbled out of the mansion, the first light of dawn broke through the horizon. The town of Hollow Creek lay still, seemingly untouched by the supernatural events of the night. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had witnessed a chapter of history long forgotten, a Thanksgiving celebration tainted by a spectral curse that lingered in the shadows of that accursed mansion. Story 2. The autumn wind whispered through the skeletal branches, carrying with it a sense of foreboding as Thanksgiving approached. My family and I decided to spend the holiday at an isolated cabin nestled deep in the woods, seeking a break from the chaos of city life. Little did we know, this Thanksgiving would be etched in our memories for far more sinister reasons. The cabin, a rustic haven surrounded by a sea of crimson and gold, seemed the perfect setting for a peaceful celebration. As we settled in, the crackling fireplace and scent of pine filled the air, creating an illusion of warmth and security. However, the woods that enveloped us exuded an ancient eeriness, and the shadows cast by the flickering fire danced like phantoms on the cabin walls. On Thanksgiving Day, the air was charged with a strange energy. The usual joyous atmosphere felt stifled, as if the forest itself held its breath in anticipation. Despite our unease, we gathered around the table to give thanks, the flickering candles casting long shadows that seemed to reach out for us. As we feasted on the traditional fare, a distant howl echoed through the trees, sending shivers down our spines. We dismissed it as a mere woodland creature, but the unease lingered. The warmth of the fire did little to chase away the chill settling into our bones. After dinner, my younger sister Lily and I decided to explore the woods, hoping to shake off the eerie atmosphere that clung to the cabin. The moonlight filtered through the twisted branches, creating an otherworldly glow. As we ventured deeper, the trees seemed to close in, whispering secrets we couldn't comprehend. A peculiar mist snaked through the underbrush, weaving a tapestry of ethereal tendrils. The woods became an ever-shifting labyrinth, disorienting us as we meandered further into the heart of the forest. The distant howls intensified, now resembling mournful cries that echoed in harmony with our footsteps. Suddenly, we stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an unnatural glow. In the center stood a weathered stone altar, adorned with decaying flowers and cryptic symbols etched into the rock. The air grew thick with an unspoken presence, and the mist congealed into ghostly figures that circled the altar. As we gazed in horror, the figures began to chant, their voices a dissonant melody that resonated through the clearing. Shadows danced on the periphery, and the temperature plummeted as if winter itself had descended upon us. The ancient ritual unfolded before our eyes, and an unseen force compelled us to bear witness to the spectral ceremony. In the center of the clearing, a colossal figure emerged from the shadows, a creature with antlers that reached for the heavens and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly radiance. The ground trembled beneath its hooves, and the forest bowed in submission to this eldritch entity. Lily and I were paralyzed with terror as the creature fixed its gaze upon us. The air crackled with malevolent energy, and the woods seemed to come alive with a chorus of anguished whispers. The ghostly figures encircled us, their faces contorted in silent agony. Without warning, the creature raised its antlered head, unleashing an otherworldly scream that pierced the night. The forest responded in kind, a cacophony of wails that reverberated through the very fabric of our reality. As the spectral figures closed in, we felt an invisible force pulling at the essence of our beings. In an instant, we were back at the cabin, the misty clearing and eldritch ceremony replaced by the familiar walls and crackling fireplace. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we tried to comprehend the surreal ordeal we had just experienced. The woods outside seemed unchanged, but an unsettling awareness lingered, a knowledge that we had glimpsed into a realm beyond our understanding. The Thanksgiving celebration continued, but the laughter and merriment felt hollow. The ancient woods held secrets, and the creature with antlered majesty had left an indelible mark on our souls. As we departed the cabin, the distant howls echoed once more, a haunting reminder that some mysteries are better left undisturbed, and that Thanksgiving in the heart of the ancient woods was packed with forces beyond our comprehension. Story 3. The wind howled through the bare branches as my family and I arrived at the remote farmhouse for our Thanksgiving retreat. It stood alone, surrounded by desolate fields and shrouded in an unsettling silence. My parents brushed off my unease, attributing it to the isolation and the approaching storm. Little did we know, the farmhouse held secrets darker than the encroaching shadows. As we settled in, the creaking floorboards and the faint whispers of the wind outside created a haunting symphony. The air inside the farmhouse felt heavy, as if burdened by the weight of forgotten stories. Nevertheless, we pressed on with the Thanksgiving preparations, determined to create warmth in the midst of the chilling atmosphere. The storm arrived with a vengeance, lashing the farmhouse with rain and howling winds. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the air grew colder with each passing hour. As we gathered around the dinner table, the distant rumble of thunder seemed to echo the uncertainty that now gripped us. Midway through the feast, the power succumbed to the storm's wrath, plunging the farmhouse into an inky darkness. Emergency candles flickered, revealing strained expressions on my family's faces. The isolation, the storm, and the eerie farmhouse began to play tricks on our minds. A peculiar knocking reverberated through the corridors, a rhythmic sound that seemed to beckon us. Against our better judgment, we followed the haunting echoes through the dimly lit hallways. The source of the knocking revealed itself in the form of an ancient door at the end of a forgotten corridor. As we cautiously opened the door, a gust of cold wind rushed through, extinguishing our candles. In the feeble light, we found ourselves in a room frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture draped in white sheets, antique mirrors reflecting distorted images, and the musty scent of ages past surrounded us. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, its surface capturing the dim candlelight. A voice, ethereal and filled with longing, emanated from the glass. Thanksgiving lost, Thanksgiving found. A cycle bound to this haunted ground, it whispered, sending a shiver down our spines. The reflection in the mirror distorted, revealing a scene from the past. A family, not unlike ours, gathered for Thanksgiving in the same farmhouse decades ago. The atmosphere was festive, but there was an underlying tension, an unspoken horror that tainted the joyous occasion. As we watched in stunned silence, the family's faces contorted with anguish. The joyful celebration twisted into a nightmarish tableau of despair. The echoing voice in the mirror spoke again, recounting a tale of tragedy that had unfolded within these very walls. The family had been cursed, bound to relive the same Thanksgiving over and over, trapped in a cycle of joy turning to anguish. The mirror revealed glimpses of past celebrations, each one unraveling into a macabre display of suffering. The souls trapped within the cursed farmhouse sought release, their eyes pleading for salvation. Dread settled in the pit of our stomachs as we realized that the spectral family's torment was intertwined with our own. The ancient curse demanded a toll, a sacrifice to break the cycle. The voice in the mirror urged us to fulfill the dark pact, to appease the restless spirits and free them from the eternal Thanksgiving nightmare. Fueled by desperation and fear, we stumbled upon an old journal that chronicled the cursed history of the farmhouse. It detailed a ritual, a morbid Thanksgiving tradition meant to sate the hunger of the malevolent forces that bound the souls within. The sacrifice required the offering of a symbolic representation of family unity. As the storm raged outside, we found ourselves standing in the dimly lit room, facing the cursed mirror. The voice guided us through the ritual, compelling us to make the unthinkable choice. Reluctantly, we formed a circle, hands trembling as we placed a cherished family heirloom into the center. The mirror seemed to absorb the sacrifice, the voice in the wind growing louder. A sudden gust extinguished the candles, plunging us into total darkness. The farmhouse echoed with anguished wails, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. When the candles were relit, the room appeared unchanged, but an eerie calm replaced the previous turmoil. The mirror reflected our strained expressions, and the voice in the wind whispered its gratitude. The cycle had been broken, and the curse lifted. As we left the farmhouse the next morning, the storm had cleared, and a feeble sunlight broke through the clouds. The desolate fields and the once haunting farmhouse now seemed ordinary, as if the shadows of the past had finally been laid to rest. Yet, the memory of that Thanksgiving lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. The farmhouse, now silent and still, held the secrets of a curse that had bound generations. and as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the echoes of that cursed Thanksgiving would forever resonate in the winds that swept through the forgotten fields. Story 4. Thanksgiving in the small town of Ravenswood was an event eagerly anticipated by all its residents. But the year my family decided to spend the holiday in the historic Blackwood Manor turned the joyous occasion into a nightmarish tale, etched in our memories. The manor, with its towering spires and ivy-covered walls, loomed over the town like a brooding sentinel. The rumors that surrounded the place spoke of a dark history, whispered by the wind through the twisted trees that surrounded the estate. Despite the ominous tales, my family, driven by a sense of adventure, chose Blackwood Manor for our Thanksgiving gathering. As we arrived, the imposing structure cast long shadows in the waning light of the November day. The townspeople greeted us with hushed warnings, their eyes betraying a mix of fear and pity. Ignoring their unease, we crossed the threshold into the grand foyer, where an antique chandelier flickered, casting an eerie glow. The manor, though majestic, exuded an unsettling energy. The air felt thick with the weight of forgotten secrets, and the portraits lining the wall seemed to follow our every move with penetrating gazes. We brushed off our discomfort, attributing it to the inherent creepiness of old houses. As evening fell, we gathered in the grand dining hall, the long table adorned with ornate silverware and dimly lit candelabras. The feast began, but the usual warmth of Thanksgiving seemed elusive in the cavernous space. Unseen drafts whispered through the cracks, and the flames in the fireplace flickered as if protesting the intrusion. Midway through the meal, a cold wind swept through the dining hall, extinguishing the candles in a ghostly dance. The room plunged into darkness, and uneasy murmurs filled the void. A distant sound, like faint footsteps, echoed through the manor, sending a shiver down our spines. We fumbled for flashlights and candles, their feeble glow revealing a different atmosphere than before. The portraits lining the walls seemed to distort, their subjects contorting into grotesque visages. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, and the temperature dropped, chilling us to the bone. Determined to salvage our Thanksgiving, we pressed on, guided by the flickering lights as we navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The distant footsteps persisted, a spectral echo that seemed to lead us deeper into the heart of the manor. Reluctantly, we followed, our senses on edge. The footsteps guided us to a forgotten wing of the manor, a section obscured by dust and neglect. The air here felt heavier, laden with the scent of decay. As we hesitated, debating whether to proceed, the footsteps ceased, leaving us in an oppressive silence. A creaking door at the end of the corridor beckoned us with an otherworldly allure. The door, seemingly untouched by time, swung open with a haunting groan, revealing a forgotten chamber. The room was adorned with faded wallpaper and tattered curtains, and in the center stood an ancient table set for a feast long gone. The residual energy in the room grew palpable, and a spectral figure materialized at the head of the table. Dressed in antiquated attire, the ghostly host surveyed us with hollow eyes. A voice, distant yet resonant, echoed through the room, recounting a tragic tale of a Thanksgiving feast that had ended in betrayal and death. As the narrative unfolded, the room transformed. Shadows danced on the walls, and the temperature plummeted. The feast that had once graced the table materialized before us, a ghastly reenactment of the ill-fated celebration. The ghostly figures at the table raised phantom goblets, their silent toasts echoing through the chamber. The atmosphere became suffocating as we realized that we were mere witnesses to a spectral tragedy, trapped in a nightmarish loop of Thanksgiving gone awry. The ghostly host turned his gaze toward us, and the room seemed to warp with his silent accusation. We were intruders in a tragedy not meant for the living. In a desperate attempt to break free from the haunting spectacle, we retraced our steps through the winding corridors. The manor itself seemed to resist our escape, the walls closing in and the air thickening with an unseen force. Whispers of regret and betrayal echoed through the halls, mirroring the tragic tale we had unwittingly stumbled upon. As we reached the foyer, the grand entrance beckoned like a portal to salvation. But the darkness fought back, shadows converging and reaching out to ensnare us. The ghostly host's voice resonated one final time, expressing a mournful plea for release from the perpetual nightmare. With a collective gasp, we found ourselves back in the dimly lit dining hall, the grand feast replaced by the remnants of our interrupted celebration. The portraits on the walls returned to their stoic gazes, and the air, though still heavy, felt less oppressive. Thanksgiving in Ravenswood had left an indelible mark on our souls. The manor's dark history had woven itself into our celebration, revealing a spectral tapestry of tragedy and regret. As we left the foreboding estate, the townspeople's eyes held a mix of sympathy and knowing, acknowledging that we had glimpsed the haunted heart of Blackwood Manor, where the past and present intertwined in a macabre dance. Forever bound to a Thanksgiving night that refused to be forgotten. Story 5. Thanksgiving in the small, forgotten town of Whispering Pines was always a peculiar affair. My curiosity got the better of me one year, and I decided to spend the holiday in the eerie town, seeking the truth behind the unsettling stories that had circulated for generations. The air in Whispering Pines seemed to carry a perpetual chill, even as autumn leaves painted the streets in hues of red and gold. The townsfolk moved with a hushed reverence, their eyes avoiding lingering gazes. The only source of warmth was the flickering glow of the street lamps, casting long shadows that danced with unseen spirits. As I wandered through the desolate streets, an old man with weathered features approached me. His eyes held a knowing gleam, and he whispered a warning that sent shivers down my spine. "Thanksgiving is not a time for celebration here, stranger. It's a night when the veil between worlds thins and the town's dark secrets awaken." Undeterred by the ominous words, I pressed on and found myself drawn to an ancient mansion on the outskirts of town. Its dilapidated facade loomed against the twilight sky, windows cracked like eyes that had witnessed untold horrors. The mansion, known as Ravenscroft Manor, was said to be cursed, a place where the spirits of the past mingled with the living on Thanksgiving night. With a hesitant breath, I stepped across the threshold. The air inside was thick, suffused with the weight of forgotten tales. The grand staircase groaned under my weight as I ascended, guided by an unseen force toward a dimly lit corridor. The walls seemed to whisper secrets as I moved, an unsettling symphony that resonated with the creaking floorboards beneath. The corridor led to a door adorned with a faded wreath. As I pushed it open, the room revealed itself as a grand dining hall frozen in time. A feast, untouched by decay, adorned the table, plates laden with succulent dishes, goblets filled with crimson wine. The air shimmered with an otherworldly glow. A voice, spectral and filled with melancholy, echoed through the hall. "Welcome, seeker of truths. On this night, the past and present converge. Feast with us and unveil the tales that linger in the shadows." With trepidation, I took my place at the table, the chill in the air intensifying. The room pulsated with a spectral energy, and the ethereal voice continued its haunting narrative. Each dish held a story, tales of betrayal, lost love, and untimely deaths that had stained the mansion's history. As the stories unfolded, the atmosphere grew tense. The temperature dropped, and the room echoed with ghostly whispers. Shadows danced on the walls, manifesting the tormented souls of Ravenscroft Manor's past inhabitants. Faces contorted with sorrow and anger, their eyes locking onto mine, as if pleading for redemption. Suddenly, the feast morphed into a ghastly spectacle. The food decayed before my eyes, turning to rotting flesh and writhing insects. The air became heavy with the stench of death, and the once grand hall transformed into a macabre banquet, mirroring the tragedies that had befallen the mansion. In the midst of the spectral chaos, a figure materialized at the head of the table. A woman in a tattered gown, her eyes hollow but filled with an otherworldly sadness. She was the Lady of Ravenscroft, cursed to relive the horrors of her past on each Thanksgiving night. The lady's gaze locked onto mine, and the room fell silent. "You have trespassed into the realm of the Forsaken," she intoned, her voice a haunting melody. "To break the curse, you must bear witness to the darkest corners of our history." As if pulled by an unseen force, I found myself transported to pivotal moments in the mansion's past. Scenes of deceit, betrayal, and unspeakable tragedy played out before me, each one leaving an indelible mark on the lady's tormented soul. It was a visceral journey through the depths of despair, a tapestry of horror woven into the fabric of Ravenscroft Manor. With each vision, the spectral banquet grew more grotesque. The tortured souls wailed in anguish, their phantasmal forms contorting with the weight of their sins. The lady's eyes pleaded for release, and I realized that my presence was intricately linked to the unraveling of the curse. As the clock struck midnight, the mansion shook with an otherworldly force. The lady, her form ethereal yet desperate, stood before me. "Break the cycle. Free us from this torment," she implored, her voice a spectral lament. With a trembling hand, I reached for the center of the spectral feast, an ancient artifact, a relic of the lady's lost love. As I touched it, a blinding light enveloped the room, and the wails of the tortured souls crescendoed into a deafening symphony. The curse shattered, and Ravenscroft Manor seemed to exhale a sigh of relief. When the light subsided, I found myself standing outside the mansion, the first light of dawn illuminating the horizon. The air in whispering pines no longer carried the perpetual chill, and the streets felt alive with the whispers of a town finally at peace. As I walked away from Ravenscroft Manor, the once ominous mansion stood silent and still, its haunted history laid to rest. The town, oblivious to the spectral events that had transpired, continued its existence, the echoes of Thanksgiving horrors fading into the recesses of memory. But as I looked back one last time, I couldn't shake the feeling that the lady's hollow gaze lingered, a silent expression of gratitude and release from the shackles of a cursed Thanksgiving night. The stories of whispering pines had found their witness, and the mansion's dark secrets were now entwined with my own. Story 6. In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where the trees stood like towering sentinels and the wind whispered ancient secrets, my family and I stumbled upon an old, forgotten cabin. Seeking refuge from a sudden snowstorm on Thanksgiving Eve, we had no idea that our decision would lead us into the grasp of an otherworldly horror. The cabin, weathered and worn, appeared abandoned, yet a feeble light flickered through the tattered curtains. Desperation outweighed caution as we pushed open the creaking door, seeking shelter from the biting cold. The air inside was dense, laden with the scent of wood and age, and the only sound was the crackling of a dying fire. As we settled in, the unease settled in the pit of our stomachs. The cabin seemed frozen in time, adorned with faded wallpaper and antique furniture. The flickering fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the distant howl of the wind outside mimicked the mournful cries of some unseen entity. Thanksgiving dinner was a somber affair. Our attempts at conversation were met with an eerie silence, as if the very walls of the cabin were absorbing our words. The air grew heavier with each passing moment, and the atmosphere felt charged with an unsettling energy. As the night wore on, strange occurrences heightened our anxiety. The temperature inside the cabin plummeted, our breaths visible in the frigid air. Objects seemed to move of their own accord, and faint whispers echoed through the empty rooms. I dismissed it as a byproduct of the eerie ambiance, but a gnawing doubt lingered. When the clock struck midnight, a mysterious fog crept into the cabin, seeping through the cracks in the walls. The feeble light struggled against the encroaching darkness, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own. It was then that we heard the soft murmur of a distant chant, a haunting melody that sent shivers down our spines. Unable to resist the call of the eerie chorus, we followed the sound through the narrow corridors of the cabin. It led us to a hidden door, concealed behind a dusty tapestry. As we pushed it open, the chant swelled, enveloping us in an otherworldly symphony. The room beyond revealed a bizarre sight, an ancient altar surrounded by flickering candles and adorned with arcane symbols. In the center of the room stood a figure clad in tattered robes, facing away from us. The chant emanated from this mysterious entity, and the air pulsed with a palpable energy. The room seemed to breathe, inhaling our fear and exhaling an unsettling anticipation. The figure slowly turned, revealing a face obscured by shadows. Hollow eyes locked onto ours, and the chant reached a crescendo. In that moment, time seemed to warp, and the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurred. A spectral feast materialized on the altar, a grotesque assortment of offerings that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Unearthly odors filled the room, and the air became thick with an otherworldly presence. The figure gestured towards the spectral banquet, an unspoken invitation to partake in the macabre celebration. Unable to resist the pull of the ritual, we found ourselves seated at the altar. The chant now echoed in our minds, intertwining with our very essence. The spectral feast became a nightmarish tableau, and the figures around us contorted into grotesque forms, their faces twisted with agony. As the ritual unfolded, a guttural voice reverberated through the room, recounting a tale of ancient rites and unholy pacts. We were unwilling participants in a dark ceremony, bound to forces beyond our understanding. The figure, now revealed as a conduit for the malevolent energy, spoke of a pact sealed in blood, where the line between guest and offering blurred. A sinister realization gripped us. The cabin was a gateway to a realm of ancient horrors, and our presence had unwittingly triggered a Thanksgiving ritual, meant to appease eldritch entities that dwelled in the shadows. The room pulsated with malevolence as the chant reached its climax. Shadows coiled around us, and the air crackled with an impending force. It was then that the figure's hollow eyes locked onto mine, and a voice echoed in my mind, cold and insidious. Offer the blood of kin, seal the pact anew. The ritual demanded a sacrifice, and the choice was clear. A blood offering to satiate the entities that hungered for our presence. Panic set in as we realized the dire consequences of our unwitting intrusion. In a desperate attempt to break free from the spectral grip, we fled the cabin, the chant fading into the howling wind. The ancient door slammed shut behind us, sealing the malevolent forces within. The night air was bitterly cold, but the snowstorm had abated, revealing a moonlit landscape that seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. As we distanced ourselves from the accursed cabin, the weight lifted, and the unnatural chill dissipated. The spectral feast, the haunting chant, and the malevolent figure were but echoes in the recesses of a nightmarish Thanksgiving Eve. We stumbled through the snow-covered woods, haunted by the knowledge that we had narrowly escaped a fate intertwined with ancient eldritch horrors. The cabin, now a silhouette against the moonlit night, remained cloaked in mystery. As dawn approached, casting long shadows over the snow, we looked back one last time. The distant sound of a haunting chant lingered, carried by the wind, a reminder that some places are better left untouched, and that on that Thanksgiving night, we had unwittingly stumbled upon a malevolent ritual bound to the shadows of the ancient forgotten woods. Story 7. Thanksgiving in the quaint town of Hollowbrook was a tradition celebrated with fervor and joy. Families gathered, laughter echoed through the streets, and the aroma of roasting turkey filled the air. However, my Thanksgiving took a nightmarish turn when my curiosity led me to a mysterious antique shop at the edge of town. The shop, nestled between forgotten buildings, exuded an otherworldly charm. Its windows were adorned with curiosities, ancient masks, faded tapestries, and peculiar trinkets that seemed to whisper tales of a bygone era. The sign above the door read Raven's Relics, and a cold wind seemed to carry the distant cawing of crows. Intrigued by the shop's enigmatic aura, I decided to step inside, The air within was thick with the scent of old leather and incense. The dim lighting cast long shadows on shelves crammed with artifacts from eras long past. An old man, the shop's proprietor, with eyes that held a wisdom beyond years, greeted me with a knowing smile. "Welcome, seeker of mysteries. On this Thanksgiving Eve, Raven's Relics has something special to offer," he said, his voice a haunting melody that resonated in the silence of the shop. He beckoned me toward a small alcove at the back, where a faded tapestry concealed an ancient doorway. As he parted the fabric, a narrow staircase revealed itself, descending into the unknown depths below. The old man's eyes glinted with an invitation, and my sense of adventure overpowered any reservations. The staircase led to a subterranean chamber, adorned with flickering candles and strange symbols etched into the walls. The air felt charged with an unseen energy, and a soft hum echoed through the underground chamber. At the center stood an ancient table draped in black velvet, upon which rested an ornate wooden box. The old man, his presence both mystical and foreboding, gestured toward the box. "Behold, the casket of thanks. Open it, and you shall glimpse the shadows of gratitude and dread." Compelled by an inexplicable force, I cautiously opened the casket. A swirling mist emerged, coalescing into ghostly images that danced in the dim candlelight. The apparitions portrayed scenes of Thanksgiving celebrations, each one tinged with an undercurrent of sorrow and fear. As I watched, the images became increasingly vivid. Families gathered around tables, their smiles giving way to expressions of anguish. The festive atmosphere transformed into a haunting spectacle where gratitude morphed into torment, and the spirit of Thanksgiving became a ghastly entity that fed on the shadows of the human soul. The old man's voice resonated in the chamber, narrating the tales of those who had dared to open the casket of thanks. Each story unveiled a dark twist, a nightmarish consequence that befell those who sought to uncover the secrets hidden within the mystic box. As the last spectral image dissipated, a bone-chilling wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the candles. The old man's eyes gleamed with an unsettling knowing, and the tapestry at the entrance billowed as if stirred by an otherworldly force. Fear gripped me as I realized I was not alone in the chamber. Shadows coiled and contorted into grotesque forms, and a ghostly figure materialized at the table. It was a spectral embodiment of Thanksgiving itself, a creature with a hollow visage that seemed to draw upon the fears and regrets of those who had gazed into the casket of thanks. The figure spoke, its voice a spectral whisper that echoed in the underground chamber. "You have glimpsed the shadows of gratitude and dread. Now, you must bear witness to the price paid by those who dare to unravel the mysteries of Raven's Relics." The chamber transformed, and I found myself transported to a series of nightmarish scenarios. In each vision, those who had opened the casket of thanks faced unspeakable horrors, their celebrations twisted into grotesque rituals, their gratitude devoured by unseen malevolence. The creature at the table seemed to feed on the despair and horror of these ill-fated souls. As the visions unfolded, I realized that the casket of thanks was a conduit for the dark underbelly of Thanksgiving, a realm where the holiday's joy could be perverted into a source of torment. The creature, a manifestation of the holiday's duality, seemed to revel in the suffering it wrought upon those who sought its secrets. With each vision, the chamber pulsed with a malevolent force. The tapestry at the entrance billowed violently, and the cold wind intensified. The old man, now a spectral presence, looked upon me with hollow eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the irreversible path I had embarked upon. As the last vision played out, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of anguished wails. The creature, satiated by the shadows it had unleashed, turned its gaze toward me. The old man's voice echoed one final warning. Gratitude and dread are intertwined. You have witnessed the curse of Raven's Relics. Now, you are bound to it. The chamber dissolved into darkness, and I found myself back in the antique shop. The old man, no longer a tangible presence, lingered in the shadows. The casket of thanks sat closed on the table, its secrets once again concealed. As I stumbled out of Raven's relics, the tapestry billowed behind me, sealing the entrance to the underground chamber. The town of Hollowbrook, oblivious to the supernatural forces that lurked within its midst, continued its Thanksgiving celebrations. Haunted by the horrors I had witnessed, I left Hollowbrook with the weight of the casket of thanks lingering in my mind. The old man's warning echoed in the recesses of my thoughts, a reminder that Thanksgiving, for all its warmth and joy, carried within it the potential for dread and shadows unseen. The mystic box had granted me a glimpse into the sinister underbelly of the holiday, and the curse of Raven's relics would forever taint my perception of Thanksgiving, turning gratitude into a chilling acknowledgement of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. Story 8. Thanksgiving in the remote town of Blackvale was a tradition enveloped in shadows and tales of the supernatural. Despite the warnings of locals, my friends and I, seeking an unconventional adventure, decided to spend the holiday in an old, dilapidated mansion atop Blackridge Hill. Little did we know that our decision would plunge us into a nightmarish tale that transcended the boundaries of reality. The mansion, known as Hawthorne House, stood like a sentinel against the backdrop of the looming forest. Its sagging roof and broken windows seemed to tell a story of neglect and decay. As we approached the imposing structure, a chill crept through the air, and the moon cast an ethereal glow on the overgrown courtyard. Undeterred by the eerie ambiance, we entered Hawthorne House, the creaking door echoing through the desolate halls. The air inside was thick with the scent of mildew, and the grand staircase groaned under our tentative footsteps. Dust-covered furniture lay strewn across the forgotten rooms, each telling a tale of a bygone era. As night descended, we gathered in the grand dining hall, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Our Thanksgiving feast, prepared with uneasy laughter and a touch of trepidation, felt like a mockery of the traditional celebrations we had left behind. Midway through the meal, a low hum reverberated through the mansion, causing the flames of the candles to flicker in a macabre dance. Unease settled over us as the temperature dropped, and the air seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. Whispers, too faint to discern, lingered at the edges of our perception. As we sought to dismiss the growing sense of foreboding, a spectral figure materialized at the head of the dining table. Dressed in tattered garments, its face obscured by shadows, the ghostly apparition exuded an otherworldly malevolence. The room fell silent, and the once flickering candles now stood still, frozen in time. The ghostly figure spoke, its voice a haunting whisper that echoed through the hall. "You have trespassed into the realm of the forgotten, where the echoes of past Thanksgivings linger in eternal torment. Feast, for the price must be paid." The air thickened as the apparition gestured toward the feast on the table. The food, once familiar, now appeared as a spectral banquet, the shadows within the room seemingly coalescing into a ghastly manifestation. Reluctantly, we continued to eat, the air heavy with the spectral energy that clung to our very souls. As the spectral feast unfolded, the mansion seemed to come alive with echoes from the past. Faint laughter and the clinking of phantom cutlery filled the air, as if the walls themselves were replaying the tragedies of bygone Thanksgivings. Ghostly faces appeared in the mirrors, their eyes hollow and filled with a melancholy longing. The ghostly figure at the head of the table became a spectral conductor, orchestrating a nightmarish symphony of the mansion's tortured history. Each course served as a vessel for a different tale, tales of betrayal, lost love, and unspeakable horrors that had stained the walls of Hawthorne House. As the spectral banquet reached its crescendo, the room descended into chaos. The ghostly apparitions, trapped in their perpetual torment, clawed at the air in silent anguish. Shadows twisted and contorted, merging with the ethereal energy that saturated the atmosphere. In the midst of the spectral frenzy, the dining hall warped, and we found ourselves transported to pivotal moments in the mansion's dark history. We witnessed scenes of betrayal, tragic deaths, and unspeakable rituals that had left an indelible mark on the very fabric of the house. The walls seemed to bleed with the residual pain of those who had suffered within its confines. A voice, distant yet resonant, echoed through the chambers, recounting a tale of a cursed Thanksgiving night that had perpetuated the mansion's spectral torment. The ghostly figures turned their hollow gazes toward us, their silent accusations hanging in the air. Desperation set in as we realized that we were entangled in the mansion's haunted tapestry, mere pawns in a malevolent ritual that sought to perpetuate the cycle of suffering. The ghostly conductor's voice reached a mournful climax, and the room convulsed with a spectral force that seemed to tear the fabric of reality. In an instant, we were back in the dimly lit dining hall, the grand feast replaced by the remnants of our interrupted celebration. The ghostly apparitions had vanished, leaving behind an oppressive silence. The mansion itself seemed to sigh in relief, as if the nightmarish reenactment had momentarily abated. As we stumbled out of Hawthorne House, the first light of dawn painted the horizon. The once imposing mansion now stood silent and still, its haunted history temporarily quelled. Blackvale, oblivious to the spectral events that had transpired, continued its existence, but the weight of the cursed Thanksgiving night lingered in our memories. The mansion, perched atop Black Ridge Hill, watched over the town like a silent sentinel, its secrets hidden behind decrepit walls. As we left Blackvale, the echoes of past Thanksgivings whispered through the wind, a haunting reminder that some places carry a darkness that transcends the passage of time.